Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Welcome to episode 111 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. When I first began teaching children's yoga, I came across a classic Fly Like a Butterfly Yoga for Children. It changed the way I thought about and taught children's yoga and showed me how to immerse children in yoga through fun and imaginative story and play. Today, I am so honored to be able to have the author of that book and the quote-unquote fairy godmother of the children's yoga movement, Shakta Khalsa, on the show with me. If you are involved in children's yoga in any form or fashion, or if you even work with children or have children of your own, I'm sure you will get loads of amazing nuggets of wisdom from Shakta and her wealth of knowledge and experience. Also, I have a giveaway for you thanks to Shakta. She sent me not only her new book, but also the children's warrior cards that she talks about in today's episode to give away. So if you would like to be entered in the draw for either one of those, leave a comment in the show notes page, theconnectedyogateacher.com/111, and let me know in those comments if you do not want to be entered in the draw for something. Otherwise, I'll put your name in both. If you are brand new here, welcome. My name is Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of three, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant working for yoga teachers. And this podcast, it was created for you, the yoga teacher entrepreneur, so that you can connect to information and inspiration every single week and feel supported as you navigate the jungles of running a small business as a yoga teacher. Before we meet Shakta, let's hear our hot tip of the week from Schedulicity.
Hello, Connected Yoga Teachers. This is Hillary from Schedulicity with the hot tip of the week. Flex your business muscles with Schedulicity. We make it easy to expand as you grow. If you add a new teacher or front desk staff, you can give them their own class schedules and unique logins. You can also add new classes or workshops as you advance your expertise. Increase your clientele when new students find you through the Schedulicity marketplace, and keep track of them by adding photos or notes to their client profiles. You can even add the multiple location management add-on when you're ready to open a second, third, or 20th location. Successful businesses grow, and Schedulicity knows you need tools that are as strong and flexible as your practice.
Thank you so much, Hillary and Team Schedulicity. In the world of children's yoga, Shakta needs no introduction, but for the rest of us who may not be as familiar with her and her work, I did a brief overview and I tried something new in this episode. Let me know how it sounds. I read Shakta's bio at the beginning of her interview while she was live and there with me. Not only did Shakta and I talk about children's yoga, we also got into some discussion around Kundalini Yoga because we both have Kundalini Yoga roots. And we also talked about, and you'll hear it near the end of the call, about running and scaling a business. And I just love the wisdom that Shakta shared about this. She even got to telling us how we could go about writing a book. So this episode is packed. Let's dive in and meet Shakta. Today, I am really honored to be talking to Shakta Khalsa. Am I saying your name right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Who is considered the godmother of the children's yoga movement. Since the 1970s, Shakta Khalsa has had the great blessing to combine her two big loves, children and yoga, into what eventually became her life's work. She founded Radiant Child Yoga Teacher Training in 1999 with the vision behind it of world peace, health, and happiness, one yoga child at a time. There have been hundreds and thousands of Radiant Child Yoga teachers from all over the world who are trained and sharing yoga with children now. Shakta lives with her husband, Carter, and son, Ramdas, in Northern Virginia. She's a Montessori educator, and she was recognized by Yoga Journal magazine as one of the top 5 Kundalini Yoga teachers in the world. She's the author of many books. The first one I saw is the classic Fly Like a Butterfly, Yoga for Children, where I quickly learned how to immerse children in yoga through fun and imaginative story. Other books include The Five-Fingered Family, Kundalini Yoga, Keep It Simple series, Guide to Yoga, Yoga for Women, and her latest book, which I don't have, The Yoga Way to Radiance, How to Follow Your Inner Guidance and Nurture Children to Do the Same. So welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Shakta. It is amazing to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. I'm very happy to be here. And you said everything correctly. I will just say, sometimes the word godmother might remind people of godfather, of something like the mafia. So what we usually say is the fairy godmother.
Oh, I love that. The fairy godmother of children's yoga. It's really sweet.
That's a little more accurate, I think, to the role that I play now in children's yoga.
So take us back to way before you started this work with your first yoga class. Do you remember being in your first yoga class?
Vaguely. My first yoga class was in 1972, and I was a student at Penn State University, and it was a college-accredited course that you could take instead of gym or gymnastics. And I was so happy because I'd been reading the autobiography of a yogi, and I really was fascinated and very drawn to the Eastern philosophies. And so it was, I don't remember the exact first class. I do remember my first Kundalini Yoga class, because at first I did Hatha Yoga, and I did that for 4 years. I do remember my first Kundalini class because it was very powerful, and I had like a moment of awareness of feeling myself in the moment, in the posture, with my consciousness like really elevated.
Yeah. I was really lucky to take Kundalini Yoga up in our area. There was a teacher who used to teach it when my son was in his little car seat. But I had no idea that's what it was. I just thought, we're going to this yoga class and it's a bit stranger than the other class I went to because we're doing mantra.
And we do all kinds of strange things, but I always tell people, yeah, I know it looks weird, but it works.
It does. Because I went back to Hatha Yoga and then I was like, something is missing. Yeah. That's fascinating. So then do you remember who your first Kundalini Yoga teacher was?
Yes, his name was Hari Prem Singh, and he was a wandering yoga teacher. He just came to my small town. Like I said, I was in Penn State University at that point. I think it was 75 or 74. And he wore a turban, had a beard. I'd never seen or heard anything like that before. I didn't know. I thought I knew everything about all the paths of yoga, and I'd never heard of Kundalini Yoga. So I remember him very well. And he's the one who introduced me to the rest of what Kundalini Yoga is about. And I went to my first winter solstice celebration and met Yogi Bhajan personally, and he gave me my spiritual name. And that was the beginning of my path. So that was about 1976.
Wow. I know exactly. That was like 42 years ago because that's how old I am.
Oh, well, then you know exactly.
So when you went, did you go to New Mexico then?
No, the winter solstice celebration is in Florida. It's in the, it used to be in DeLand, Florida, but now it's in Lake Wales. Like a little bit south of Orlando. Yeah, so winter solstice is always their celebration, and summer solstice is New Mexico.
Right. Okay. So then you became a Kundalini Yoga teacher, did you?
Yes. The way that worked in those days was there was no such thing as teacher training. That just didn't even exist until I'd say the 1990s, when yoga became popular. In the 70s, the way it worked is it was a spiritual path. It was something you felt called from your soul level to do. And people would go live in spiritual communities called ashrams. So I went to live in the Baltimore ashram, mainly because they had a natural food store and cafe as well as a yoga center. And I had already been studying and working in natural foods for several years. So I've been working with natural foods, vegetarianism, and all of that since the early 70s. So that's just all part of the Kundalini path is healthy eating as well. So that's where we started doing it. Here's the way it used to work. It wasn't like it is now at all. You would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you would do 2.5 hours of yoga and meditation. Then you do a yoga break somewhere else in the day and probably some meditation before you went to bed. And within about 3 months, you were pretty much expected to start teaching Kundalini Yoga. You just taught from a manual, just had a manual sitting there, and you just say, okay, let's do this now. And it was very, very simple, but very good way of learning. And like I said, the idea of teacher training really didn't exist. I don't know any paths of yoga that had a formal teacher training like that. It was basically you lived your yoga.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. It really, that is how my teacher studied. So my first teacher training was Kundalini Yoga, and I studied with Set Dharamkar.
Oh, yes. I know her very well. She's a wonderful lady.
She is.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know she lives 20 minutes from my house. I drove 3 hours to Toronto to study with her and then realized like we're almost neighbors.
Now, I'm sure she would tell a similar story because we were all just really on the path. And it was something we felt called to from our soul. And yoga wasn't really that popular. I remember when I would mention yoga, people would think I was saying yogurt. And actually, this sounds really odd, but in the 1970s, even yogurt was new. The idea of yogurt. No,
Really?
I'm not kidding. Yes. It's like, oh, yogurt. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
And you're like, no, I'm teaching yoga. I mean, what did your friends and family think then? Because I feel like even when I took my teacher training, it was pretty out there for my area.
It was out there, very out there, yes. And beside that, the Kundalini path, I don't wear a turban now, but I did for 27 years. And so it's not only just like you were doing yoga, you actually had an identity that was very distinctive. White clothes, a turban, no cutting of the hair. So your hair was, if you're a woman, it was on top of your head under your turban. Same thing for men. A man would have a beard. So my family, fortunately, I had a pretty open-minded family in a lot of ways. And I remember just my mother saying to me, I don't know why you have to do the things you're doing, but I can tell you're happy. And that's all I care about. And that was I always remember that my mom said that to me. And they accepted us very well. Now, my husband's family, that was a different story. That was a very different story. But eventually, just through staying connected to them and being kind and checking in with them and sending them cards, eventually they saw past all the things that were not like their lifestyle and that they were afraid of. And they just saw past them after a while. So all of that, but that was part of the reason for the ashram, is to strengthen yourself within the ideals and the lifestyle that you want to live without having so much influence around you of the regular everyday world. Right. So that was one thing that made it different. Yeah. So that was pretty much the way it started. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so then fast forward, you were a Montessori teacher. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So the way that happened was that in the ashram, there were children. They were young children, because within the ashram wasn't like a monastery. People got married, had kids. And I met my husband there in that Baltimore ashram too. And we've been married over 40 years now. So there were children there. I started doing yoga with the children. We all did that. We all took turns. And then I just really started opening my eyes to children. It was like, oh my gosh, they're just like little sparks of light running around here. They're so joyful. They're so wise. And so I started working in the Montessori school that they went to. And I was the yoga teacher. Then I was the assistant. And then I took my own training in the early 80s, AMS Montessori training. And I became a Montessori teacher. I think it was about 82. And I started a school then in Baltimore, right beside our natural food store. It was called the Golden Temple Montessori School.
Oh, that's amazing. And did I read it right somewhere that your assistant was teaching with you, or someone was saying, you need to share this, like you have a real gift for it and you need to share this out. How was it to like, I'm guessing it wasn't an overnight thing to think, yeah, I'm really
No,
gifted at teaching.
no, it was. Well, here's the way that kind of went down. My husband and I had a reputation within the Kundalini communities, ashrams, which were all over the US, Canada, and everywhere. And we had a reputation as being people who could work patiently with children who nobody knew what to do with. And so twice in our marriage, in a fairly early in our marriage, we had a child come live with us each for 3 years. And we were like their auntie and uncle. And we helped them. One of them was very hyperactive. One of them was kind of OCD, but there weren't those labels in those days.
Right.
You just got what you got and you just worked with the kids you got and you just figured it out. And that's kind of like what we did. So the reason I put that piece in there is because my husband and I wanted to have a child, but nothing happened for 14 years. And then in the early 90s, we had moved to where we live now in Northern Virginia. And I got pregnant kind of miraculously after all this time. And whenever our son was born, I didn't want to go back to starting another school and having, I mean, I wanted to be a parent and have like some part-time work. So that's when I started thinking, well, you know what? I know how to teach kids yoga. So why don't I start doing that? And that's in the early 90s is when I was teaching about 500 children a week. I would teach at one school for a day, another school for a day, a daycare center. I'd go there on, so every week I had my whole routine that I would go and teach. And I did that. And even the Fly Like a Butterfly book, the children in there were from a particular Montessori school, most of them, where my son went. My son was on the cover of that book when he was 6.
Oh.
And that's him on the front. And so my exchange with that school was I taught yoga to their kids, to all the kids in the school. And my son got to go at a discount to the Montessori school. So that's how I arranged that. So when you look at that book, it's really interesting to think that when you see an 8 or 9-year-old child in there doing some yoga, they've already been doing yoga 5 years because I taught there for 5 years. And then we made the book. So these kids were not just fooling around. This yoga was their life. Yoga was part of their life. And whenever, I remember one girl, her name was Tori in the book. And when she graduated from the 3 to 6 class, she was 6 years old. No, wait, maybe it was the older class. Yeah. The 6 to 9 class. When she graduated from there, her mother came up to me and said that the yoga that she had been doing for those 5 years, that yoga was the crowning glory of her Montessori time. So the parents really recognized the value that the yoga was bringing to the children and their ability to be calm and self-assured and centered and know who they are, I think, and focused on and do well in their schoolwork too.
Yeah. I have to
all
say
those
that,
things.
Yeah, your book really opened up my eyes because I think that I was asked to share children's yoga, and before I had any official training or had read your book, I was like, well, what would that look like? Like, I guess we'll do a yoga class, which doesn't work with children.
Yeah, not exactly.
I feel like
you can do it. You can set it up like a Kundalini class, but it looks very, very different, but still has like a tuning in, a warming up, a relaxation, a meditation. It still has those elements, but it looks very, very different.
Yeah. And so I feel like your book was the first eye opener for me that it wasn't about controlling a class.
Well, if you got that, then kudos to you, because a lot of people don't. So, how can I get these kids to mind me? Oh, mindfulness. Yeah. All right. Let's do that.
Yeah. And so do you want to tell us my guess is that it was the work that you were doing and seeing what worked with children and what didn't that inspired a lot of it. But do you want to tell, for anyone who hasn't read the book, do you want to tell them what the basis is around the story part of it?
Okay. So the way that I realized that it worked well, especially with young children, because I'd say Fly Like a Fly is good for children about 2 to about 8 years old. And that's a time period when they have a great imagination and they're into fantasy stuff. So it's, you just make the stories. This is what I did in the book. I would say, like, we're going on an animal adventure. Okay, how do we get there? So we would have poses that would act as transportation poses. Okay, so now we need to get on our train. So let's chug, chug, chug. And we would move our arms and do a Kundalini Yoga exercise that looks like train wheels, for example. And the kids would vocalize, which they love to do. And plus, when they're vocalizing, they're using their breath. So perfect. They're going, choo, choo, choo. They're actually using breath, but for them, it's just fun. But they're using all the yoga tools. So then we get to the jungle. Now we see a bunch of animals, and it's so easy to do animal poses. Yoga is made up of animal poses, right? And Kundalini Yoga, we have even more than Hatha Yoga. Like, we have Cobra, and we have Down Dog, but we also have like monkey jumps and dinosaur walk and
Frogs. There's some
frog
frogs.
hops. And and these are things that are unique to Kundalini Yoga. So one of the things I was thanking the universe for was bringing me Kundalini Yoga, and then bringing in this children element was such a perfect combination, because Hatha Yoga is a lot of holding poses, and kids don't like to hold poses. I would say, in general, in my years of teaching, they like to move their bodies. And so Kundalini Yoga, we do so much movement with coordinated breath. And we have these things we call exercises. They're not the same asana poses as you find in Hatha. So what I have found is a lot of other children's yoga trainings have borrowed from Kundalini Yoga, or you could have borrowed from Radiant Child, because we're based in Kundalini. And they put in frogs and they put in things, but they're not normally part of Hatha. They're part of Kundalini.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. My kids grew up doing those little stories, all of them, and I can still remember. And that was really what kind of saved me teaching yoga classes, like starting to bring in the play and the story, and letting go of trying to control everyone. And instead, we were all participating together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we use the yoga to control the class. So this is all part of the teacher training program that I started, Radiant Child Yoga. For example, you walk into a class and you think you're going to start off with some deep breathing, and then you're going to do some warm-ups. Come in, you're all running around the room. Now, you can try to stop the river, but you aren't going to stop the rushing river very easily. So why not go with the flow of it? So in Radiant Child Yoga, we teach, if you come in and it's chaos, well, just organize the chaos. Don't try to stop it, just organize it. And so what we do is I might come in and say, let's be a big rainstorm. And I'll get them all running in the same circle, same way, so no one's bumping in with one another. And then we crash our feet and we bang our, we make sounds like it's thunder and lightning. And then when I think getting their energy out, and I can feel it's time we can start to change it. I'll say something like, now the storm is passing over the mountain. You can hear it in the distance. It gets softer. The rain is slowing down, and the rain has stopped, and there's nothing left, puddles. And then we flop on the floor and we become breathing puddles. And everybody's lying there breathing and they're puddles. And then we kind of like the puddles can ooze on over to their yoga mats now. And now we start the class.
Right. Oh, that is such a gift. Yeah.
It's a way. And we're Radiant Child Yoga is just filled with these kinds of ideas. How do you playfully and still honoring the child's desire to move their bodies and be joyful? How do you take that enthusiasm and then organize it? And we do that all through the yoga, all through the meditations. So we have deep relaxations too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And how does this look very different? Like, take, for instance, the relaxation. How does that look different than an adult Shavasana?
Well, sometimes children don't want to lie on their backs with their arms open. And I always give them that as the first choice because I'll say, like, this is a yoga pose too, and this is how we do it. But if I see a child wants to turn on their side or curl up, I just honor that there's something that child is getting from that, and perhaps they need that, and I will let them be. And then we usually go through a little yoga story, like maybe a beautiful, soft, white, fluffy cloud has come down and is going to take us up, up, up in the sky. Now we get to through a rainbow. First, we move through red. What does the red feel like? Now we move through orange. So we'll make those relaxations into stories too. And in fact, Cheka is one of the trainers for my program. Cheka and I have made really nice CDs of guided relaxation meditations for children. One of them for younger children is called Rainbow Walk, and the one for older children, 9 to 14, is called You Are Made of Energy. And that one takes you right through your body to see, like with a high-powered telescope, to see all the cells of your body and how the cells are full of energy, full of light, just like the universe is. So we have some for younger children and we have some for older children on these different CDs. But just that's usually how I do the relaxation with the younger ones. And sometimes I'll do some very slow counting. But with almost like a hypnotic voice. But most of the time I tell a story, and then at the end I might say, I have a puppet or something. And Ellie the elephant wants to come and wake up all the children, but she's just waiting to see if you're really peaceful, if you're really calm, if you're really breathing with the ocean, if we use that image. And then I'll count to 10 very slowly so that they have a little bit of time without any story, but just in a deeper relaxation phase.
Right. Oh, I love it. I can tell that you have such a gift of story. I'm captivated as you're talking through it. What age do you think that children can begin yoga?
Oh, well, in our ashram community, it was like as soon as they were born, we would just roll their little arms and legs, and because they were in the womb and they were all kind of stuffed in there, and now they came out and they need some, they just need some gentle massage type movements and things like that. And then we would bring the children to the morning practice, the babies, so that they could hear the mantras, they could hear the singing, and they absorb that. And I would say doing yoga on their own might happen more like when I say on their own, they might just sit in the parent's lap. As soon as they start toddling around, they could sit in the parent's lap, playing a toy, listening to the mantra while the parent is singing or chanting or breathing. And then I would say more like around 2 years old, I would start working directly with the children.
At the age of 2.
And even when around 2, yeah. I did have a toddler class when I was working in daycare center. They do very, very simple yoga. I don't try to mix up too much stuff, like maybe just touch their toes, shake their body. I don't talk about breathing that much with them unless we're doing breathing separate, where they start to become aware of their breath. But they can't really handle too many different things at once. They're just getting used to their bodies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so it sounds like
2 years old.
Yeah, 2 years old where you're starting to kind of guide it, but it really sounds like it's a lifetime of yoga.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
It's more like my son was interviewed when he was 11 years old by a cable TV company who came up to summer solstice, and he happened to be around and they interviewed him. And one of the things he said in the interview was, I guess I've just gotten used to doing some yoga and meditation every day. Because he had mentioned before, he said, well, I wake up in the morning, maybe I'm just feeling a little off. And I'll say, well, let's just do a little bit of meditation. And then when he said that, I've just gotten used to doing some yoga and meditation every day. The reason he said that is because when you start early, that is just as normal as brushing your teeth every morning.
Right.
It just becomes normal. It just becomes natural to just do a little something at least before you start off on your day, and your children get that as their habit.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say to parents, just like 10 minutes a day in the morning is fantastic. At least,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think, I don't know, in my own experience with my kids, they would do more yoga when they were littler. And then we went through with each and every one of them,
Mhm.
maybe not so much my daughter, this
Mhm.
whole like, I wouldn't do yoga. It's so not cool.
Mhm. Mm. That's why I made the yoga warrior cards. I'll have to send you a pack of those. The yoga warrior cards, they're transformers doing yoga. And all the poses have very interesting names like skyscraper and flying hero. I wanted to do something to bring the boys in, and I would say girls like them too, but this is something that I found that they're like Pokemon cards, so they're a lot of fun. They have matches and everything. And I say that that's something that the like 8, 9, 10, even 11-year-old boys will enjoy doing.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, my oldest is
Yeah.
now 20 and he's like, Mom, can you show me some yoga for this? Like, I'm
Yeah,
feeling
that's really
uncomfortable.
good.
Yeah.
My son had a period of time when he would do it, but he wasn't that into it. And now he's 27 and he really likes um, exercising in general and doing some form of yoga, whether it's Kundalini or just some hot yoga or whatever. And then he does meditate every day, and that he just does it because he knows it really helps him.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you said, it's like brushing
Mhm.
your teeth. It becomes a habit. And then you notice what it's like when
Yeah.
you're not doing it. If there were
Yeah.
yoga teachers who are listening and they currently teach children's yoga, and you could share a
Mhm.
few gems with them of like, here's what I've learned over the years, what would that be?
Um, that this is one of the main principles of our training program, Radiant Child, is children play at yoga, and so it needs full, and at the same time it needs to be yoga. So if you make it so playful that it's like a creative movement, you will have a chaotic class and you won't feel exactly like it was yoga. But if you make it too much like adult yoga, you'll lose the kids because they're not there. So you have to have like this kind of balance between the two. And this is one of the main things that we teach. And that is, for example, let's say we're holding tree pose. All right, we'll just take tree pose because that's what everyone knows. So when we're holding tree pose, if you want the children to really get the feel for tree pose, have them open their eyes, gaze straight ahead at something on the wall, and then actually don't just say breathe, count the breaths. Breathe in 1, breathe out, breathe in 2. Tell them ahead of time we're going to do 4 or 5 breaths so they know how long they need to stay steady for. And then have an ending to it. In Kundalini, we always have an ending to each exercise, and this defines the exercise. So it sounds like a small thing, but it's not. So at the end of the 4th breath, breathe in 4, let them stay there, let them focus, breathe out, relax. And then they know we're finished. And now we're going to do the other legs. So it's important to have form to it, structure and form, and then bring in the fun element as well. So that's what I'd say, especially for younger ones. For older ones, one of the most important things I'd say is really delve into their lives. What is it that what challenges them, and how can yoga help them? And then relate the yoga to their situation. Let's say carrying heavy backpacks. Oh, we need to do some shoulder rolls for that. Look, this is something you can do anytime your shoulders feel tight. You don't have to be in a yoga class to do this. I'm going to teach it to you now, and then let's see how many of you remember to do this during the week. And when you come back next week for class, I'm going to ask you, did you remember to do your shoulder rolls? So that's the way you work with older ones. You make it relevant for their lives.
I feel like both of those things could help
Mhm.
for an adult yoga class as well.
I think you're absolutely right. In fact, a lot of people come to our training and they said it really helped them to be able to teach adults as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
so. I think teaching to kids really gave me a whole new perspective. I just remember one
Mhm,
of my
yeah.
friends, and she took a children's yoga teacher training, and then she would get everyone in tree pose, and then she would run around being the wind. I was like, "Do you mean for a kids pose and kids class?" And she said, "No, for an adult class."
That sounds like fun.
It does. Anything else that you think, well, here's a question that comes up a lot. Yoga teachers are wondering what yoga teacher training to take. So what are some of the things that we would look at in terms of which children's yoga teacher training do we want to take?
Well, I guess number one has to be convenient for you. Um, but I would say that a lot of teacher trainings for children's yoga have sprung up in the past 10 years as children's yoga in schools and other areas have become more popular. Um, if it was me personally, I really would research the program and the teacher and what is their history. A lot of the programs that have sprung up to me don't have a lot of substance. They don't have enough history. They don't have enough experience. Some of them are good as well. Some of them, many of them, were originally with me as their original teacher, or with the Radiant Child as one of their original trainings. So I would look at that. Personally, to me, if I saw that a lot of the teachers had Radiant Child as their training, I would just take Radiant Child because obviously that seems pretty obvious to me.
Right.
And I teach the basic 1 to 3 training. It's a 30-hour course. I teach it some, but I also have trained about 14 trainers all around the world. Most of them are in the US and Canada, and they're excellent. They're handpicked by me. And so even taking a training with them, which they have a page on the childrensyoga.com website. So you can even see them there. But more and more, I'm teaching less and less of the basic training and focused on our 200-hour teacher training and our 95-hour teacher training. We're yoga school with Yoga Alliance. And I focus more on that, the basic 1 to 3 training, but I still teach it. Sometimes it's fun because people ask me to. So that's one thing I would say. Look for it. You know what? It's not just about fun. It has to be fun, but it's not just about fun. And a lot of the training programs give you a lot of little tools and techniques, but they don't sometimes have the depth that to feel like they're transforming you as the person taking the course. But I think we do that in Radiant Child. This is the feedback we get from people. They feel transformed. And really, that's another one of our little sayings, which is beside children play at yoga, we also say, you are the yoga that you bring to whatever you do. So you are the yoga. It's not something you do, it's something you emanate. And I think you want to choose a program that has that philosophy and that kind of depth. If you're going to take the time and energy and funds to go do it, make sure it's something really that has that kind of depth to it.
That's great.
Yeah.
You had said that you do a 200-hour. Is that Radiant Child? Is that a version of it?
Yes, but it's called Radiant Child Family because it goes on every member of the family, from babies to senior citizens. So it's yoga for everybody. It's about 90% Kundalini Yoga, about 10% Hatha adaptations. We took the best from Hatha, like the way that you can adjust different things to make them work for you. And it's we hold it every summer in Northern Virginia, but some parts of it are offered in other places. There's one module called Yoga for Children with ADHD Autism, and there's another module on mindfulness called Happily Ever Now. And then the 105 hours section is in the summer in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And that's where you learn all the way from all the family yoga from babies through senior citizens.
That's fascinating. I love that it encompasses the entire family.
Yeah. You know how I wrote a book called Yoga for Women?
Yes, I have it.
I teach, you have that. I teach, I do a day of training in our 200-hour to teach the students how they can do women's workshops based on that book. because the book is really surrounding women empowerment, and it's also surrounding women's cycles and healthy breast care and things like that. So part of our 200-hour training is, how do you teach to women? I mean, I don't want to leave men out. Men, we have a section on men too, but women have a lot more different things going on with their bodies and things like that. So we like to focus on women, and Yogi Bhajan, my teacher, always focused on women quite a bit. He always said that women are the key to everything. And I do find that is happening in our world right now, in our governments, for example. And so there is a whole section we focus on women and empowering women. And I find that the feedback I get is that a lot of people who work with children also work with women and work with the moms and things like that.
True.
Yeah.
I have some questions now, some kind of nitty-gritty technical questions about this,
Sure.
because it sounds like you've really built this into, and I'm going to just tip my listeners know that I often talk about the business of yoga, but it sounds like you've scaled it where you have other teachers sharing. So, because you can't be everywhere all at once.
Yeah, right.
And then also, you've worked to publish books, and my guess is this is your full-time career, and you call yourself a yoga professional. What would you say to someone who's struggling with that, who feels like, I don't know if I should charge for this because maybe yoga should be free, or do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking that. It's a good question. Okay. Sometimes I do things just as a donation and volunteer because I really just feel it and want to do that. But I always feel that there needs to be an energy exchange, which means that I'm giving something, they're giving something. So let's say someone can't afford the yoga, but they could come early and get the place ready, or help me in some other way. Then, because it's good for their morale, it's good for their honoring too. It's not just because I think it's fair. I think it's also good for the other person to give something. So I think it's good for their self-esteem and their honoring, and so there's an exchange. And yoga is a very beneficial practice, and I see no problem with charging for it. I think it should be charged, but I think if you really are in a situation where you feel very deeply that these people should be able to have yoga and they don't have money, then just find some other way to do it. Like, just say, okay, can you just come early, help me get it set up, maybe check in the people, stuff like that. Do you want to set up a table, and we'll, set up some food for people, or just make some tea, or just use your creativity and allow there to be some sort of an exchange. But sometimes even now, I mean, I'm semi-retired, so I enjoy volunteering for things. I do volunteer work for an animal rescue that's in my area. And sometimes I'll just be, at a school like a Title I school or something, and I'll just say, would you like me to come in and do some yoga with the kids? And I never ask for any money because I know that they probably aren't going to find it in their budget. But who knows, maybe if I get started with it, they'll like it so much they will find money in their budget. But personally, I don't need them to. It's just I'm okay if I'm just doing it as a volunteer. But for someone who really needs to be able to do this as their career and their revenues for making money, to me, there's no question that yoga should be something that is valued monetarily, as well as given freely in certain cases in which it feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah. I love how you brought in that it's honoring the other person when we ask for something in exchange.
It is.
That's
It really
fantastic.
is.
Yeah.
We're not being like, oh, poor thing, you need to have some yoga here, let me give it to you. That's an unequal situation. But to make it more like, yes, you have value. What value would you like to bring to this? do you want to come early and hey, this will be our exchange or something. And we give scholarships, we give part scholarships to trainings, and there is some kind of an exchange. It's either an exchange with coming and assist me, or it's an exchange where they get a discount on the training and they make a pledge to teach a certain amount of volunteer classes in their community.
Right.
So
What
they're
have you,
giving to the community.
yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
What have you learned about marketing and sort of scaling that, like getting other people to help you out, other teachers to teach what you've been teaching? What have you learned over the
You know
years?
what? I'm really good at I'm a visionary. I'm really good at that. I see where things are going. I get amazing ideas. I can't say I'm really good at marketing. Um, I would like to be better at marketing, but I can feel that I feel like my product is so pure and what we give is so real that it's hard for me to get behind some of what I think of as sort of superficial marketing. But I know there's probably a good marketing person out there who could help us and still keep the integrity, so I use social media. When people give us testimonials, I'll put them up, and I can say I'm really fantastic marketer.
Well, you're doing something right because you have really a successful career as a yoga
Mhm,
professional and author. Um,
mhm.
yeah,
Well,
and leading
yeah,
and
I think
training.
some of it is that we have a really excellent product and people feel
Yeah.
that. But in order for people to know it before they come, that is probably the most challenging part for me. Because, for example, in Radiant Child 1 to 3, we give over $225 worth of materials. And let's say another training is giving only a manual. So they get $225 worth of materials, but they only pay, say, $120 for the materials. So we have to add $120 onto the price of the course for the materials. And the other training is giving them like a 20-page manual, and theirs cost less. So, there's some of that going on. How do people really actually know the value unless they really research it a little bit? So there's some challenges I find with that, but we don't want to not give all these materials because the materials are essential to the program. You learn how to use all the materials, and then you
Right.
go home and you've got thousands of lesson plans under your belt because of the materials.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, well, I love that you're admitting to like it's still being a challenge because I
yeah,
think that it is for all of us, really.
yeah,
It's really
yeah,
about just like you said, you have an amazing product and it's just
yeah,
getting that out there, like the wording of it. How do you tell people how amazing it is?
yeah.
Basically all
Well,
you have
for
to do.
for about the first 10 years that Radiant Child will be 20 years old next year.
Oh,
And
wow.
in about the first 10 years, I always got evaluations from people who came to training, and I improved the training because of those evaluations. And also I trained trainers and they would give their feedback, and we kept improving, and we still are. But I do find that once it's sort of like I have a lot of confidence in how people feel after they take the training because I see how different they are and how transformed. And I would say that how do you convey that before the training happens? That's the part we haven't quite. I think that's our challenge. Yeah.
Right.
hmm
Oh, that's amazing.
If you have any ideas, you
I
please let
do.
me know.
I do. There's a method of like sharing someone's transformation through story. And it's basically just asking, like, how
Mhm.
scary was it? Or how did you feel before you took the training? You just ask them how it was and you share that video out. And then they say now, and what you'll hit on is now I feel confident to teach children. And now I'm not trying to
Mhm.
control a room of children that are
Mhm.
running around like crazy. It's basically just
I
sharing
think we need a professional person to come and do that. That's
um,
I understand my areas of talent and my areas of not so much talent. Okay.
well, this is the thing, like, your
Mhm,
area of expertise and
mhm,
talent is, like, in
mhm,
creating the content, in creating,
mhm,
the training content.
mhm.
And you're right that you don't
Mhm.
need to do the marketing. You need someone else to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. So we'll work on that. I did want to mention too, when you said creating the creative content, for some time now, I've been working with a woman named Jennifer Foster, who contacted me to work on a TV show called Yoga Dog.
Oh,
And she's down in Disney World area down there in Orlando. And we've been really contemplating and moving forward, but it needs a lot of backing and all that. So that's working. But I am the creative subject matter expert for this TV show, and so I know it will happen. So just kind of keep the words "yoga dog" in mind. I know it will happen when it's the right time.
that's amazing. Well, and that's the thing, like
Yeah, very excited about that.
your
Yeah.
expertise is the creator in that and all the way through
Hmm.
this. What helps you to
Hmm.
write a book? I feel like that's a daunting thing. It's something that I would love to do in terms of I teach two things to yoga teachers, prenatal yoga and yoga for pelvic health. And I would love
Mm.
to create a book. Is there anything that you can think this is what helped me sit down and make it?
Yes, I do. My first book, Fly Like a Butterfly, I first had to get a computer. This was in the mid 90s, and I had to learn how to use a computer. But then once that happened, I would sit at the computer with my hands on the keys and nothing would happen. And then I talked about it to my husband, and he said, just write down how you teach a kids class. Just write it like you're teaching it. Okay, kids, now we're going to go to blah blah blah. We're going to do this. Let's be frogs. And then the books start happening. I had to get over the hump. Then I could go back and fix it and tweak it. And I would find every book work like that. When I was inspired, or even if I wasn't, I would just write down some little bit that came to me, and I would save all those little bits. And then after a while, I'd see how they all fit together. And then I would tweak it. And I would get it, maybe an expert to help me with it too. My last book, I did have a woman who was an editor, and she and I bounced off each other, and she helped me with transitions, because I would see that, okay, I would start talking about this, and then my next paragraph was talking about something a little tiny bit different. And she would say, we need a transition sentence here. And I say, yes, you're right. And then she would help me with that. So sometimes you do need some outside help,
Yeah.
because we all have our tendencies when we're speaking and writing. So after writing the first book, which was the children's book, then I proposed the Kundalini book. And the Kundalini Yoga book that I wrote was the very first mainstream Kundalini Yoga book as taught by Yogi Bhajan to come out in the public, come out in
Mhm.
mainstream. And I'm very proud of that book. And that book has no personal voice in it. So that's the other thing, is you have to decide, is the voice going to be personal, or am I giving information? In the Kundalini book, I just gave information. You never hear me say anything about I. There's no I in that book. But then my same publisher said, we want you to write the KISS Guide to Yoga, and it's a dummies book, and you put your personality into it. And that book is very chatty. It's
Yes.
like, it's really chatty. And that's what they wanted. That was fun, very fun to write. And then the third book is like a combination of the two. The women's yoga book, it does have my personal voice, but the way I thought about that book, and this might be a helpful thing to you, is I'm just talking to women here. We're sitting around drinking tea, and it's very cozy at the fire, where there's a fireplace, and I'm just talking to women. And that's what the book sounds like. It sounds like we're just sitting around the fireplace, and we're just women talking here. And maybe that's a helpful thing for your books. Just kind of imagine, let that pop into your mind. What is, you're in the scenario that you are speaking from, in that scenario. I think that
Okay.
could be a helpful tip for you,
I'll try
you
it.
know.
I'll try it.
Mm.
I have all of the pieces, and I think, like, when I
Yeah.
write them, I have manuals, and I'm like, these could be books, really.
Yes, yes. And you just take out the pieces that, and find where they fit together, and then you find the bridges to make them all fit. That's a good thing to know. The last book I wrote, is a culmination of my 40 years of working with children. And I'm so proud of that book. I love it. I feel very satisfied that in my sort of semi-retirement, let's say, that was able to happen. And it's filled with stories of other people who I'll definitely send you a copy, but it's called The Yoga Way to Radiance. And that was my publisher's idea. See, the publishers, they have their own ideas about these things. So in the title, they wanted the word yoga, and they were nice enough to put my word radiance in. But the real title of the book is the subtitle, which is How to Follow Your Inner Guidance and Nurture Children to Do the Same. That really tells what the book's about. And it's filled with stories of parents and teachers and how their lives and children's lives were transformed with these tools. It's just like pretty amazing. And it had all kind of little wonderful pieces of yoga in it, and like journaling activities and things like that. So it's a little bit like a workbook. At the same time, it's like reading a really good book with wonderful, inspiring stories in it.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. It was just when I
Yeah.
was reading your bio and I was like, oh, that looks amazing.
Oh no, I'll make sure you get one.
I feel
You
like,
can get it on Amazon too. Yeah.
okay, I feel
Yeah.
like none of us should have as much of a wall up to writing when you said I had to get a computer and then learn how to use
Yeah.
it. We got that
We got that part, don't we?
But you're
You know
right.
what?
It's like
Here's
the
another
sitting
thing
there.
that works for me, and that is when I feel inspired, I just write that down and then put it to the side, maybe in a folder with writings. And then after a while, I start to see how these little pieces of things go together. And you might find that was to find that just write when you're inspired, and even if it's only like a paragraph, and then put it to the side, and then after a while you'll see that you have a lot of things that go together, and maybe those pieces are the inspiration piece that go with how to write your manuals and things like that.
That's
Because you
amazing.
want to have a combination of inspiration and actual information. It's like inspiration, information. Those two things together make a really good book.
Oh, that's really cool. That is exactly how I just read a book, or I'm reading a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And that's the starting process of his writing habit, is to every time he feels inspired, he writes it down, saves all those things until it comes together. And that's like the start of every book, he said. Well, it has been amazing to chat with you today. If our listeners want to find out more, look into your trainings, what's the best way that they can do that?
Oh, they would do that on childrensyoga.com. And we do have 3 wonderful trainers all on the east side of Canada.
Oh, wonderful.
And of course, all over the United States.
Okay.
We do go everywhere. So if somebody wants to host a training, they can just get in touch with me, and either myself or one of the trainers will come out, and they'll do the 30-hour first part of the Radiant 1 to 3 training.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. And
Oh, thank you so much too.
thank you for your books. I love them.
Oh, well, that's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Sat Nam.
Sat Nam. Bye-bye.
Well, connected yoga teachers, how was that? Thank you so much, Shakta, for sharing all of your wisdom, your knowledge, your light, and for sharing children's yoga. There is just this ripple of effect that goes out into the world with that, and we're just really grateful for you. Connected yoga teachers, what was a key takeaway for you? I would love to hear about it in the show notes. And again, when you go to the show notes, it's at theconnectedyogateacher.com/111. Then when you leave a comment in the show notes, you are automatically entered to win either Shakta's book or the warrior cards that she talked about. And let us know what one of your key takeaways was for this episode. If you are wanting to work with me, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look under Work with Shannon. And also, if you're looking for an event or a teacher training, online or in person, look under the events and trainings tab there. A shout out of thanks and hello to BETR from the United States for leaving a 5-star review for us. Thank you so much for that. This person says, as a self-proclaimed podcast junkie, the Connected Yoga Teacher is a reliable go-to weekly podcast that always leaves me feeling not just informed, but incredibly inspired. Shannon's calming voice, patient demeanor, authentic vulnerability, and sense of humor is relatable and encouraging. With a clear heart of service, she engenders a sense of we're all in this together to a population of folks who truly want to make a positive difference in their respective corner of the world. So grateful to Shannon and her team, and I love how the Schedulicity tip of the week is always tied into the current podcast topic. Well done. Thank you so much for that review. It means a lot when you take the time to leave a review, either in iTunes or on our Facebook page, and I try and read them all on the podcast. Thank you so much, dear listeners, for taking the time to tune in and hang out. It has been a lot of fun. Thank you also to our team, Samantha, Suzanne, Crunch, and Cindy, for making today's episode possible. Okay, Connected Yoga Teachers, do you know what I'm going to ask you now? What will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, to your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?